When fire tore their home apart, only the truth could keep them standing together. There are evenings on the dry willow land when the wind blows cold, stirring every regret a man ever carried. Cole Landry figured he'd live out his days alone until a stranger knocked, a widow and her 2 boys, each running from their own shadows. None of them guessed that moment would tie their fates for good. In this wild country, where fire can take everything, only truth and grit could hold a family together through the storm. Cole Landry had lived so long with only the wind and dust for company, he almost forgot what footsteps sounded like on his porch. The days at Dry Willow ran together, each one stitched to the next by fences to mend, cattle to doctor, ghosts to outrun. Folks in town said he was part of the land itself, sunburnt, silent, too stubborn to leave. Regret kept him up at night more than coyotes or thunder. He'd sent away one person too many in his life, and the echo of that loss still rattled around every empty room. So when he nailed up a little sign at the post office, "Help wanted, housekeeper, good pay, no questions," he did it half from necessity, half just to hear someone's voice besides his own. He figured nobody'd come this far out, not with winter snapping at the hills. He didn't expect anything, least of all the knock that came just as dusk fell, right when the valley was washed in that fierce, lonely gold. The woman stood on the step, coat hem dusted, hair pulled back sharp, shoulders set like she'd been walking into storms for years. Her boys clung to her sides, one tall, already watching the world with wary eyes, the other smaller, his fist twisted in his mother's skirt. Cole took them in with one slow glance. 3 shapes cut from hardship and road. "I'm Ada Monroe," she said, voice steady but scraped raw. "You posted for help." Cole opened the door wider, but he didn't smile, didn't ask for names. He saw the way Ada's mouth tightened, caught the tremor in the tall boy's jaw. "I did," was all he said, gravel low in his throat. "We came from Sage Crossing," Ada added, not as explanation but as fact. "It's been a long ride. My boys are Clay and Toby." The boys didn't speak, just studied him, Clay sizing up his boots, his hands, the battered hat pulled low. Toby half hid behind his brother, brown eyes huge and dark, a shadow of someone not yet lost but halfway there. "Come in then," Cole said, and they crossed the threshold like stepping into uncertain water. Inside, the house breathed cold and wood smoke. 1 pot on the stove, 2 battered mugs on the shelf. Not a picture in sight. Ada set her bag down slow, careful, like she was afraid the floor might collapse. She scanned the room the way women do when they're measuring whether a place can hold them or spit them out. "You got space?" she asked, voice harder now, daring him to turn her away. "2 rooms in back," he answered, looking everywhere but at her face. "Didn't figure on kids." "Didn't figure on much, I suppose," Ada said, flat. "We'll work for what we take." "I don't need charity, Mr. Landry." "Not offering it." The words were clipped, but something in his chest lurched. He hadn't meant to let anyone in, not really, especially not a woman with grit in her voice and a pair of boys who looked like they'd fought wolves already. That was all it took. The lines were drawn, the bargain struck in the quiet. No welcome, no kindness, just necessity and the hush of strangers with too much to lose. As Ada unpacked a threadbare blanket and a dented tin of coffee, the silence in the house changed. It got heavier, more fragile, like a wire pulled too tight. Clay watched Cole's every move, jaw set as if ready to throw a punch if need be. Toby stayed close to his mother, eyes flickering from shadow to shadow. Cole found himself standing in the doorway longer than he meant to, watching this new, uncertain life unpack itself in his kitchen. He remembered another time, another voice, laughter echoing through this house, long gone, all of it. He'd built walls so high no one could climb over, not even himself. But now the quiet was broken. The fire crackled, boots scraped on floorboards, and for the first time in years, Cole Landry didn't feel alone. He felt something worse, hope, sharp and dangerous. The kind of hope that made a man wish he was worth saving. Outside, the sun fell away behind the ridge. In the new darkness, Cole wondered if he'd made a mistake letting anyone in. But as Ada Monroe tucked her sons into borrowed beds and sat on the edge of her own, with tired hands folded, Cole couldn't bring himself to shut the door. He stared into the night, waiting for regrets to claim him, but the only sound was the hush of 3 people breathing in the dark under his roof. For the first time in a long while, he was afraid, not of being alone, but of not knowing how to be anything else. Night fell thick and early, dragging a cold wind through every crack of the old ranch house. Ada moved about the kitchen with a soldier's focus, turning dry beans and scraps of salt pork into something close to stew. Clay watched her, back pressed to the wall, shoulders squared. Toby clung to Ada's skirt, silent, the kind of quiet that grows from too many long roads and not enough warm rooms. Cole set the battered plates on the table, clumsy, almost apologetic, then dropped into his chair and stared into the fire. The old stove creaked, throwing uneven light across the 3 strangers at his table. For a moment, no one spoke, and the clink of Ada's spoon was louder than any word. Hunger pulled at them, but pride was hungrier. Ada broke the silence first, her voice flat and iron hard. "We're not here for pity, just work and fair trade. You treat us even, we'll do the same." Cole grunted, still looking at the fire. "Don't have much. Never did. What I got, you'll earn." Clay's eyes flicked from Ada to Cole, as if waiting for a fight or a trick. "You run this place alone?" he asked, voice thin but sharp. Cole's jaw set. "I get by." There was a weight behind those words, something too heavy for the supper table. "Used to be more here." Ada's gaze flicked away. "All of us used to have more," she said, low. The silence tightened. Toby's fork clattered. The wind battered the shutters and the stew thickened in the pot. Cole heard his own heartbeat in his ears, that old regret rattling around his ribs. He reached for his coffee, hands shaking just a little. Suddenly Clay's voice cut through. "You ever send someone away who needed you?" His tone wasn't cruel, just too old for his face. The question struck deep, and for a long second Cole couldn't answer. "Sometimes you don't get to fix the past," he finally said. Ada's hand stilled, jaw hard as stone. "Sometimes you don't get a choice," she murmured, barely more than a whisper. Before anyone could say more, the sound of hooves snapped the tension. A horse in the yard. No one in this country called at this hour unless they meant trouble. Cole's spine straightened, the room suddenly on edge. He reached for the shotgun behind the door, every muscle tight. Ada put herself between her boys and the window, eyes sharp, body coiled. Clay gripped the edge of the table, breath held. Toby's hand found hers, fingers ice cold. Outside, the rider circled slow, lantern swinging, hat low against the wind. The house seemed to shrink, every sound magnified, boots on the porch, knuckles on wood, a shadow moving past the window. Cole opened the door an inch, shotgun ready. "Who's there?" a gravel voice answered, slow and familiar. "Tom Duncan, sheriff." Cole relaxed a hair, but not much. "What brings you out this way, Tom?" The sheriff's eyes were flat as the land. "Saw lights. Folks in town are talking. You bringing strangers out here, Cole? You better know what you're getting into." Ada met Tom's stare through the crack in the door, chin high, refusing to flinch. The sheriff looked her up and down, then settled on the boys, cold calculation in his gaze. "Dry Willow don't take kindly to ghosts from the past. You take someone in, you take their trouble too. Don't forget it." Cole nodded once, voice tight. "I never do." When the sheriff rode off into the night, the wind rose louder, rattling every loose board. Ada shut the door soft, lips pressed thin. Clay's eyes blazed with questions he didn't dare speak. Cole sat back down at the table, but the meal was over, the warmth gone. For a long while, no one touched their food. Outside, the valley seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move, the next break in the silence. Inside, 4 souls tried to remember what it meant to feel safe, and all of them, in their own way, came up empty. The morning broke gray and restless. Sky hung low with clouds heavy as old grudges. Cole was up before dawn, mending a broken fence rail by the corral, boots deep in mud from last night's storm. The earth was soaked and bitter, his hands raw, stiff with memory. He watched the horizon the way a man watches for signs he hopes won't come. Smoke, riders, past mistakes returning. Ada stood at the window, hair still damp from sleep, watching Cole through the wavy pane. She caught the way he worked, silent, hard, as if every swing of the hammer was penance for something he'd never say. Clay moved around the house, checking every lock, eyes dark and sharp. Toby chased a wooden horse over the floorboards, a small hope against all that silence. By midday, the wind picked up, rolling dust and scent of mesquite through the yard. Cole barely heard the hoofbeats until they were right on the fence line. 3 riders approached, badges glinting, dust rising. At the front, Sheriff Tom Duncan, his mustache bristling, eyes narrowed like he was sizing up a rattlesnake. Cole set down his hammer, wiped his hands on his pants, and walked out to meet them. The sheriff swung down, boots sinking in the mud. "You keepin' busy, Landry?" Duncan asked, voice sly. Cole grunted. "Busy enough. Word travels, even out here. Some say you got company now. Folks get nervous when strangers show up, especially with the way things been these past years." The sheriff's tone held a warning, quiet but unmistakable. Ada stepped outside, Clay close behind. Duncan's gaze fell on her, measuring. "You got a name, ma'am?" "Ada Monroe," she said, steady as stone. Duncan's eyes flickered. "You got people vouching for you in Dry Willow." Ada shook her head, chin set. "No, sir, only myself." The sheriff turned to Cole, voice low, almost friendly. "You remember what happened to the last fella who took in strays, Cole? This valley doesn't forget. You bring trouble here, you answer for it." Something hard passed between them. Old history, old pain. Ada heard it, felt the threat press against her spine. Clay stared down the sheriff, fists clenched at his sides. Toby peeked out from behind Ada's skirts, eyes wide. "Whatever happened before," Cole said, voice flat, "ain't got nothing to do with this." "Maybe," the sheriff replied, "but the past has a way of catching up. You take on someone else's burden, you better be sure you can carry it." With that, Tom Duncan mounted up, spurs flashing, and the 3 riders turned back toward town, leaving only the churned earth behind. The wind rattled the corral gate. Ada stood frozen, hands gripping her shawl. Clay leaned close, voice a whisper. "Ma, what did he mean?" Ada shook her head, her own worry reflected in her son's eyes. "He means there's things out here that never stay buried." Inside, the house felt smaller. Cole stoked the fire, jaw set, shoulders drawn, tight. Ada watched him from across the room, wanting to ask, not daring yet. Clay watched both adults piecing together every word, every silence. That night, Clay lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The sheriff's words echoed in his mind. In the next room, Toby whimpered in his sleep, dreaming of thunder or worse. Cole sat by the window with his shotgun across his lap, eyes fixed on the night. Ada curled herself around her sons, listening to the wind and feeling the weight of other people's secrets pressing in. The land was quiet, but in Dry Willow, quiet was never safe for long. The cold gripped Dry Willow that night, seeping through the walls and floors. Cole moved about the ranch house with a restlessness he couldn't shake, checking the stove, piling more wood on the fire, his boots thudding heavy on the old boards. Ada watched him from her corner, folding and unfolding the same thin blanket. Clay sat silent at the table, shoulders hunched, eyes shadowed with questions he wouldn't ask. Toby played near the hearth, lining up pebbles and pretending not to notice the grown-up's unease. The wind clawed at the windows. Outside, the dark pressed in, thick as old sorrow. At last Cole let himself settle near the fire, shedding his worn denim coat and letting the orange light spill over his back. Ada glanced over, then froze. There, just below his left shoulder blade, was a scar, long, rough, pale against his tanned skin, old as the land itself. She said nothing for a while, just kept folding, but eventually the words forced their way out. "How'd you get that?" Cole looked at the flames, jaw tight. "Didn't run fast enough when the bullets started flying. Years back, land dispute turned mean. Some folks thought shooting was easier than talking." He didn't elaborate, and Ada didn't press. That was how it was in the West. Pain sat in the room with you, didn't always get a name. Night deepened. Toby, restless in his dreams, cried out, a thin, frightened call for his father lost to memory and fever. Ada gathered him up, rocking, whispering comfort she no longer believed herself. Tears streaked down her face, hidden in the shadows. Clay moved to sit beside Cole, saying nothing, only sharing the quiet and the crackle of the fire. Cole, unsure, put a rough hand on Clay's shoulder. For a second, Clay stiffened, then, slow as spring thaw, let himself lean in just a little. It was the first touch of trust, and it burned deeper than any scar. Suddenly the fire snapped loud and wild, sparks leaping, flames licking up the log. Toby, half awake and frightened, stumbled near the hearth. In a blink, the hem of his shirt caught a stray spark. Ada cried out, but Clay was faster. He lunged, knocking Toby back, patting out the ember with his bare hand. Ada swept both boys into her arms, heart hammering in her chest. Cole knelt beside them, voice rough with fear and relief. "He's all right. You're both all right." For the first time, he pulled the boys close, his big arms gathering them in. Ada's eyes met his, and for an instant the suspicion melted, leaving something fragile and bright in its place. Clay clung to Cole, shaken but proud. Toby burrowed into Ada's lap, thumb in his mouth, safe again for now. Ada brushed hair from both boys' faces, then looked at Cole, a silent gratitude passing between them. The fire glowed steady, shadows dancing on the walls. Later, as the house quieted and the boys drifted to sleep, Ada lingered at the doorway, watching Cole tend the dying fire. He didn't see her, or maybe he did and chose not to speak. She saw the lines in his face, the weight he carried, the scars that hadn't faded. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she'd come to the right place, even if she hadn't chosen it. And in that hush, where flame met darkness, a new beginning quietly waited. The sun came up behind a curtain of mist, turning dry willow silver and strange. Cole was out with the horses, checking hooves for cracks, mind tangled with dreams he couldn't remember. Inside, Ada swept the floor, trying to make a home out of borrowed hours, while Clay and Toby collected eggs in the cold, their laughter small but defiant. By midday, the wind changed, carrying the thud of hooves and the sharp, careless laughter of men who didn't belong. Cole stiffened. He recognized that cadence before he saw them. 3 riders, dust-stained and easy in their saddles, led by Jesse Pike, a man with a jawline cut from stone and eyes too empty for kindness. Jesse reined in at the gate, spat in the dust, and let his gaze wander over the ranch. "Well, if it ain't Cole Landry, hiding out with a fresh set of orphans and a pretty face. Thought you'd given up on lost causes." Cole said nothing, just wiped his hands and stepped closer. Ada, watching from the doorway, felt her stomach knot. Clay hovered at her side, jaw set, every muscle coiled. Jesse slid from his horse, boots thumping, and leaned on the fence. "You heard a woman named Ada Monroe was in these parts?" he asked his men, loud enough for the yard. "Seems she's got a way of showing up where trouble's already started." Ada's hands trembled, but she didn't move. She remembered Jesse from another time, another town, his voice, the smell of whiskey and iron. Clay glanced up, reading the worry on her face, and bristled like a pup guarding its den. Cole's tone was flat. "You passing through, Pike, or just here to stir up dust?" Jesse grinned, showing teeth. "Just checking on old friends and settling old scores. Some folks forget, Landry, but I don't, especially not about missing women." The words hung in the air, sharp as a blade. Toby, clutching a wooden horse, stared at Jesse with wide, unblinking eyes. Cole moved, a subtle shift, blocking the boy from view. "I got no quarrel with you," Cole said low, "and I'd like to keep it that way." Jesse spat again, close to Cole's boot. "We all want things, Cole. Just remember, the prairie never forgets, and Dry Willow's full of ghosts." He mounted up, signaling his men. As they rode off, Jesse called back over his shoulder, "Best keep your doors locked. And your stories straight." Their laughter faded into the wind, leaving behind the sour taste of dread. Ada pulled her boys inside, shutting the door tight. Cole stood by the fence long after, eyes tracing the horizon. Inside, Ada's hand shook as she poured water. Clay watched her, anger and confusion warring in his face. "Who was that, Ma?" Ada hesitated, voice brittle. "No one we want coming back." That night, after the chores and after the boys had finally gone quiet, Ada and Cole sat at the table, lamplight flickering. Neither spoke of Jesse, but his shadow stretched long across the room. Outside, the wind beat at the windows, and every creak of the house sounded like footsteps returning. Ada's gaze lingered on Cole. "If it gets too dangerous," she whispered, "I'll take the boys and go. I won't bring trouble to your door." Cole's reply was just above a growl. "This is your place, as much as mine. Trouble's found me before. You didn't bring it. But I won't let it take you." No more was said. But something in the way their eyes held fast across the table, in the way Cole's hand closed gently around Ada's, said what words could not. Night fell fast, the kind of darkness that made every breath sound louder in the old ranch house. Ada had tucked the boys in, but Toby tossed and turned, his small hands clutching the corner of a frayed quilt. Restless, he slipped from bed and padded through the house, the floor cool beneath his bare feet. A loose board in the kitchen always creaked. Toby, tiny and curious, pressed a heel and felt it shift. Kneeling, he pried it up, heart-thumping, and discovered a small wooden box, aged smooth by years and secrets. Inside, faded letters tied with string, a silver-handled knife etched with the name Nora, and a photograph of a young woman, her eyes so much like Cole's it hurt to look. Before Toby could close the box, heavy footsteps thundered in. Cole, raw from a day fighting fences and his own ghosts, saw the boy frozen with the knife in hand. Rage flashed across Cole's face, sharp, sudden, too big for the small room. "Put that down!" His voice cracked through the night. Ada rushed in, grabbing Toby, pressing him close. "He didn't mean nothing," she pleaded, eyes wide and pleading. Clay hovered behind her, fists clenched, ready to defend his brother if he had to. Cole slumped against the table, fighting to breathe through the old pain. "Those are things better left buried," he muttered, voice heavy as river stones. But Ada would not let go. "Whose name is that, Cole?" "Nora, that woman in the photograph." He stared at the fire, jaw working. Finally the words came, broken, halting. "My sister. Years back she begged me to run with her. Said trouble was coming. I was scared. Thought staying put was safer. I let her go alone." He swallowed hard. Never saw her again. The room seemed to shrink, the silence thick and hot. Ada's eyes glistened, her voice shaking but steady. "You never forgave yourself." Cole nodded, shame like a brand. "Not a day, that's the truth." Clay stepped forward, the old knife gripped tight. "Did you love her?" he asked, not as a boy, but as someone who'd lost, too. Cole took the knife, fingers brushing Clay's. "I did. I still do." Ada laid a hand on Cole's arm. "You're not the only one with ghosts." For a long moment, none of them moved. Then quietly, Ada led the boys back to bed, promising stories of rivers and wild horses, anything but sorrow. Cole sat alone with the box, holding the photograph in his big, scarred hands. Outside, coyotes howled at a moon veiled in clouds. Inside, one man's secret spilled into the night, and a family bound not by blood but by brokenness drew a little closer. The next morning the sky over Dry Willow pressed low and gray, heavy with unshed rain. Before noon, the storm broke, fierce and relentless, drumming against the roof until it drowned out every sound but the crackle of the fire. The creek swelled, the earth turned to mud. By nightfall the ranch was an island cut off from the world. Inside, Ada did her best to keep the boys busy, Clay with chores, Toby with wooden animals lined up along the windowsill, but tension built with each passing hour. The house felt smaller, the walls closer. Cole kept glancing out, worry gnawing at him. By the second day, Clay's cheeks burned and his breaths came ragged and fast. Ada pressed a cool cloth to his forehead, but the fever only climbed. Her supplies, her precious, hard-earned medicines, were nearly gone. "I need willow bark, feverfew, something," she whispered to Cole, desperation raw in her voice. Cole stared at Clay, pale and shivering. "There's nothing left in the shed?" Ada nodded, trying to be brave for the boys. "If we wait, he might not make it." Cole's jaw tightened. "I'll go." The rain hammered the world outside. Ada reached for his arm. "It's near dark. The flood might have swept the bridge." "I can cross upstream at Miller's Ford," Cole said. "I'll make it to Doc Bill's, bring back what we need." He didn't wait for argument. He grabbed his slicker, saddled the old sorrel, and vanished into the storm. Riding out, the world was all water and noise. River running wild, lightning clawing the sky. Cole pushed on, cursing his luck, his pride, the helplessness burning in his chest. Somewhere beyond the trees, he heard distant riders, shouts carried by thunder, a flash of gunmetal ahead. Jesse Pike. Two of Jesse's men blocked the trail. Cole's horse reared as Pike appeared, soaked and grinning under his wide hat. "Thought you'd hide out forever, Landry? Night like this, only ghosts and fools ride." "I'm no ghost," Cole spat. Jesse's smile turned mean. "Hand over whatever's in your satchel and you might walk out. Or maybe I just send you downstream to join your sister." Cole's eyes narrowed. The gunfight was sudden, thunder, a crack, then mud and hooves. Cole ducked, rolled, the world spinning in wet and pain. Pike's shot grazed his arm, fire streaking down to bone. Cole staggered, clutching the wound. Just as Jesse closed in, a rifle cracked from the trees. Jesse cursed, wheeled, vanished into the rain. A figure stepped out, cloak dripping, face shadowed. "You all right?" The voice was a woman's, low and familiar. Cole blinked through blood and water. "Nora." She didn't answer, only pressed a hand to his wound. "Save your strength, we're not finished yet." Together they limped toward Doc Bill's cabin, lightning painting the night white. Back at Dry Willow, Ada watched the storm in silence, holding Clay and Toby close, praying for the dawn. Cole woke to the sour smell of whiskey and lamp oil, the clatter of tin against the wood stove. He lay on a cot in Doc Bill's cluttered cabin, his arm freshly bandaged, rain still beating a tired song on the roof. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. The fire? The warmth, the gentle hum of a voice he hadn't heard in a lifetime. Nora sat by the hearth, back to him, darning a tear in her old brown coat. She was older now, sun-browned, hair streaked with gray, but there was no mistaking the set of her shoulders or the stubborn tilt of her chin. Doc Bill hovered nearby, grumbling as always. "You Landrys sure know how to pick your moments. Nearly got yourself drowned and shot all in one night." Cole tried to sit, pain pinning him down. "How—" Nora cut him off, never turning. "You always did ride straight into trouble, Cole. Some things never change." He managed a half smile, but regret flickered behind his eyes. "Thought you were dead." Nora shrugged. "Thought a lot of things. Turns out I'm not so easy to bury." She finally turned, her gaze sharp and steady. Cole caught sight of the old scar, a white ridge along her left hand, twin to the one on his own. The truth hit him with a force bigger than any bullet. He reached out, voice cracking. "I'm sorry, Nora. I should have come after you." She didn't flinch, only looked him dead in the eye. "You ran when I needed you most. Left me to wolves, man and beast alike. I survived, but I never forgave you for choosing your own skin over family." Cole swallowed hard. "I was afraid. I didn't know how to fight for you, not then." Doc Bill slid a cup of coffee toward him, trying to cut the chill in the room. Nora ignored it. "If you want to make things right, start with the ones still breathing. Ada and her boys. Your family, whether you admit it or not. Don't let them down, Cole. Don't run again." A long silence fell. Outside, thunder faded to a distant mutter. Nora stood shouldering her bag. "You want my forgiveness? Earn it. Keep them safe, even if it costs you." She paused in the doorway, eyes softer for just a second. "And if Jesse Pike ever lays hands on any one of them, you put him in the ground." Then she was gone, swallowed by the thinning rain, leaving Cole aching with a mix of shame, hope, and the fragile promise of redemption. By midday, the storm broke. Cole, battered but alive, made his way back to Dry Willow with Doc Bill's medicines tied to his saddle and a new kind of weight pressing behind his ribs. When he saw the ranch house rising through the mist, Ada rushing to meet him, he knew, no matter the past, he'd fight like hell for their future. That night, as the wind died, Cole sat by the window, fingers tracing the old scar on his hand, the echo of Nora's words settling deep in his bones. The face he thought he'd lost forever was gone again, but her challenge was only just beginning. Cole returned to Dry Willow just as the land was shaking off the last of the storm. The sun had yet to find its way back, and the world was washed in the cold blue of early morning. Ada met him on the porch, worry carving new lines across her face. Clay, pale but breathing easier, watched from behind the door, and Toby clung to his mother, eyes wide. Cole pressed the satchel of medicine into Ada's hands. "Doc Bill said it'll bring the fever down. He sends his best." Ada's hands trembled as she thanked him, relief and gratitude flooding her voice. Cole squeezed her shoulder, a gesture that said more than any words. But before they could catch their breath, news broke. A child from the neighboring ranch had vanished in the night. Word spread fast. A girl, barely 7, missing without a trace. Tracks led into the low hills, horse prints muddied by the rain. Sheriff Tom Duncan rode in hard, his face drawn and set. He eyed Ada and her boys with suspicion, the shadow of old prejudices flickering in his gaze. "Anyone see strangers near your land?" he asked, cold and direct. Ada shook her head, but Clay bristled. "We don't know nothing about any girl." The sheriff's glance lingered on Cole. "You took in outsiders, Landry. Outsiders bring trouble." Cole stood firm, jaw tight. "You know Ada. You know these boys. Don't lay your ghosts at our door." While the men argued, Toby slipped away to the barn, heart pounding. He'd seen something out by the creek, shadows moving, voices that didn't belong. He tried to remember the details, but fear muddied the edges. Sheriff Duncan began organizing a search. Neighbors and ranch hands gathering rifles and lanterns. The tension in Dry Willow grew thick as smoke. Whispers followed Ada wherever she went. Doubt, suspicion, the age-old fear of anyone different. That evening, as the search party fanned out, Jesse Pike's name surfaced, an old rumor, a new fear. Ada overheard two women whispering at the well, "Pike's back!" That woman saw too much. Now her bad luck's come for all of us. Inside the house, Clay turned to Cole, voice breaking. "Pa, what if they're right? What if we brought all this down on everyone?" Cole knelt, resting a heavy hand on the boy's shoulder. "Sometimes the world finds reasons to blame the wrong people. What matters is we stick together. That's how you face it." Suddenly a commotion outside. Riders returning, a shout, someone running. Toby came stumbling into the kitchen, cheeks streaked with tears. "I saw them," he gasped. "Two men out by the cottonwoods, heading west. One of them had a red bandana, like the man who scared Mama last week." Cole's face hardened. He rose, reaching for his rifle. Ada met his gaze. No words, just a silent promise to protect their own. As dusk settled, Sheriff Duncan called for quiet. "We ride at first light. And Landry, you and yours. Be ready to answer if the girl ain't found." That night, with the house braced tight against the cold, Ada gathered her sons close, whispering prayers into their hair. Outside, Cole watched the darkness, every shadow a threat, every wind a warning. And for the first time, when Clay laid a trembling hand on Cole's arm, he didn't call him Mr. Landry. He said, quiet and fierce, "Pa, you'll keep us safe, won't you?" Cole's answer was simple, but it carried the weight of a man who'd lost too much to risk losing more. "I ain't leaving, not again." The morning rose hard and gray over Dry Willow, the air sharp with the scent of gun oil and dread. Neighbors gathered along the road, faces carved from suspicion and worry, rifles slung over shoulders and eyes darting to every shadow. Cole stood at the gate, Ada and the boys behind him, watching the sheriff marshal his posse. The storm hadn't washed away the town's fear. It had only stirred the mud deeper. Jesse Pike rode in from the west with a handful of hard-eyed men, their boots crusted with red earth, horses blowing steam in the cold. He dismounted, hat tipped low, a mean smile twisting his mouth as he looked Ada over. "Never figured I'd see the day Dry Willow turned soft," Jesse said, loud enough for all to hear. "Harboring runaways and old ghosts must be a new season for lost souls." Cole braced himself, stepping between Jesse and Ada. "You've got no place here, Pike. Move on." Jesse's laughter was hollow. "You always did think you could choose who belongs, but you can't outrun what you did, or what she saw." He jerked his chin at Ada. "She remembers more than she lets on, about what happened to that missing girl, back when your hands were dirtier than your boots." Ada stiffened, face drained of color. Clay's hand tightened around Cole's sleeve, while Toby pressed against his mother's side, wide-eyed. Sheriff Tom broke the standoff. "Enough, Pike. There'll be no justice handed out by the likes of you. You got a claim, you make it before the town. Not here, not like this." Jesse spat in the dust. "Sheriff, you ain't the only law out here. Some things deserve judgment. She saw me back then. She saw more. You ready to tell it now, Ada?" A hush fell. Ada stepped forward, her voice thin but steady. "I saw you take that girl. Saw you threaten her family. I ran, but I didn't forget." Jesse grinned, the crowd stirring. "So you admit you ran? Left her behind?" Ada's voice broke. "I tried to save her. I failed." Murmurs rose. Cole's voice cut through them. "If you're here for blood, Pike, You'll have to go through me first." A shot cracked the air. Sheriff's men moved fast, pinning Jesse's crew against the barn. The crowd erupted, shouting, boots thundering, a tangle of hands and guns. In the chaos, Jesse grabbed Clay, dragging him behind a wagon. Ada screamed, lunging forward, but was pulled back by a neighbor. Cole dropped his rifle, hands raised. "Let the boy go. It's me you want." Jesse's grip tightened on Clay's arm. "You want to save them, Landry? Admit what you did to Nora. Admit it in front of everyone." Suddenly, a woman's voice rang out from the edge of the crowd. Nora, alive, hat pulled low, coat soaked from travel, stepped into the ring of light. "He doesn't owe you anything, Jesse. You owe this whole town the truth." The sheriff strode forward, pistol drawn. "Pike, your time's up. Dry Willow's got no place for men who prey on the lost." Jesse's sneer faded as Nora faced him, scars bared, eyes cold. "You tried to break me once," she said, "but I survived. And I remember every name, every deed." With the crowd watching, Jesse's bravado crumbled. He let Clay go, shoving the boy forward. "You got no proof." Sheriff Tom took him by the collar, hauling him toward the jail wagon. "We've got all we need." As the posse rode out, Ada collapsed to her knees, Clay clinging to her. Cole went to them, pulled both into his arms. Nora lingered a moment, her presence a balm and a warning all at once. The sun was rising, blood red and hard over Dry Willow. For the first time, the crowd looked at Cole not with suspicion, but something close to respect. And Ada, holding her sons, let herself believe, just a little, that they'd finally found a place to belong. The hush that followed Jesse Pike's arrest settled like a thin frost over Dry Willow. No one slept easy that night, least of all those in Cole's ranch house. Ada kept to the kitchen, hands restless as she scrubbed already clean dishes. The boys huddled on a blanket by the fire, faces pale with the memory of gunfire and the echo of old secrets. Nora lingered at the edge of the lamplight, her coat still damp from the night. Cole poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a tin cup and slid it across the table toward her. She nodded thanks, but didn't touch it, her eyes scanning the room as if looking for ghosts. Ada finally broke the silence, voice tight and weary. "There's more you ought to know about Toby." She sat down, folding her hands in her lap. The words came slow, like stones rolling downhill. "Toby's not mine, not by blood. Years ago, after my husband died and Clay was just a toddler, there was a house fire on the prairie. I found Toby wandering alone in the ash, clutching a broken toy. No one ever claimed him. I brought him with me. I couldn't leave him to the wolves, not then, not ever." Toby's chin trembled. "I ain't your boy?" Ada's voice cracked. "You're mine in every way that matters. I chose you, Toby. I'd choose you again 1,000 times." Cole saw the look in the boy's eyes. Fear and sorrow knotted together, the ache of not belonging. Clay moved first, wrapping his arms around his brother. "You're my kin, that's enough." But Toby couldn't bear it. He bolted out the door into the dark, the cold night swallowing him whole. Ada rushed after, but Cole was faster, boots pounding the frozen ground, heart hammering with every step. Clay trailed behind, calling his brother's name, voice echoing over the fields. They found Toby in the cottonwoods, curled in the roots, shivering and wet-eyed. Cole crouched down, gathering the boy into his coat. "Listen, son, I know what it's like to feel left behind, but you're not. You're here because you belong, not because of blood, but because of love and choice. I left someone once, my own kin. I'll never do it again." Ada knelt beside them, arms wrapping both boys. The wind cut through the branches, but inside that small circle, it was warm. Fragile, yes, but whole. Back at the ranch, Nora watched them return. She caught Cole's eye through the flicker of the lantern and nodded, a silent pardon for all that had passed. She laid a hand on Toby's shoulder as he walked by, the kind of touch that says more than 100 words. As the fire burned low, Cole sat at the table, Ada beside him, both boys sleeping close. Nora took the chair across from him, her voice soft but clear. "You did right by them tonight." Cole looked down, voice rough. "I'm just trying not to fail again." Nora almost smiled. "We all fail. Only thing left is what you do next." The night deepened, but for the first time in a long while, Cole felt the heaviness inside him shift, not gone, but changed, like a wound finally allowed to heal. The first rays of morning cut through the mist over Dry Willow, catching on the frost-laced fence posts and the battered porch of Cole's ranch house. Ada was up before the sun, mending a torn sleeve by lamplight, the boys sleeping close on their makeshift beds. The night's raw truth still clung to the walls, but something softer moved in the air, a fragile hope, worn but alive. By breakfast, Clay was out at the cattle pens, learning to move quiet among the herd, boots still too big but his shoulders set with purpose. Toby, cheeks flushed and eyes brighter after a night of uneasy dreams, was coaxing the skittish roan filly around the paddock, stumbling but refusing to give up. Cole watched them from the porch, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of black coffee, Nora's shadow at his side. Ada joined him, tucking stray hair behind her ear. "You sleep any?" Cole shook his head. Didn't want to miss the sun coming up. Not after last night. Sheriff Tom Duncan rode in slow, hat pulled low, his face lined with something heavier than duty. He dismounted, boots crunching on frost. "Jesse Pike broke out last night. He's gone. Left this behind." The sheriff handed Cole a scorched scrap of paper. Jesse's crude script burned into it. "The past ain't dead. It's just waiting its turn." Ada stiffened, reading the message over Cole's shoulder. "He'll come back." Tom nodded, voice low. "He always does, but I came for another reason too." He looked to Ada, tipping his hat. "I owe you an apology for doubting you, for letting fear speak louder than the truth." Ada's reply was quiet but steady. "You did what you thought right. So will we." Tom turned to leave, pausing by the porch rail. "Dry Willow's a hard place, but it remembers kindness longer than grudges. You need help, you call." After he'd gone, Ada and Cole stood in silence. Above them the sky was clear, the grasslands glistening with the promise of spring. Inside, Nora set a battered trunk on the table. "Help me fix this lock," she asked. Cole knelt, working the rusty metal until it snapped open. Inside were letters, some sealed, some faded, written in Nora's hand, and a small photograph of 2 children in a sunlit yard. She handed it to Ada. "It's proof of what we survived and what we built." By midday, the ranch was alive with the sound of hammers and saws. Clay helped Cole patch the barn roof. Toby clambered over the corral rails, laughter bright and wild on the breeze. Ada scrubbed the windows, humming a hymn under her breath. Nora stitched old linen into curtains, her needlework steady as her voice. Evening settled soft and gold. Cole gathered everyone on the porch as the sun sank low. "I can't promise the past won't come calling, but I can promise this: you won't face it alone. Not again." Ada's hand found his. "We'll stay. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." A distant hawk wheeled over the grass, its cry sharp and lonely. But on the porch, with family around him, Cole knew the meaning of belonging. At last, smoke coiled above Dry Willow as dusk bled into night. The horizon burned orange, shadows crawling over the land. Jesse Pike had returned, no longer hiding in the dark. He and his gang swept in with torches and gunfire, the crackle of flames tearing through the cold. Cole woke to shouting, the stink of smoke sharp in his throat, and sprang from bed as glass shattered in the front room. Ada grabbed the boys, shoving Clay and Toby beneath the kitchen table. Nora pressed her back to the wall, Colt revolver steady in her hand, eyes dark with old fury. Jesse's voice rang out across the yard, raw with hate and whiskey. "Ada Monroe, come out! You got secrets to pay for. Tonight's the night." The barn was already burning. Cole pulled boots and rifle, heart pounding as he crept toward the back door, but Jesse's men had the house surrounded, guns glinting in lantern light. Sheriff Tom, roused by the blaze, thundered up with half the town at his back. The line between friend and foe was a flicker, trussed a tightrope stretched thin in the firelight. Suddenly, a window smashed. Clay and Toby darted through, running for the shadows. Ada screamed, but was dragged outside by one of Jesse's brutes, pistol to her head. "She saw what you did, Pike," Nora shouted, firing into the air, sending the outlaws ducking for cover. Cole sprinted after, dodging bullets, as the sheriff's posse closed in from the road. The yard erupted, shots echoing, men shouting, dust and flame everywhere. Clay, small but wild, tackled a bandit twice his size to keep him from the house. Toby swung a length of timber at another's knees. Cole found Ada on her knees in the dirt, Jesse's fist wrapped in her hair. He raised his rifle, but Jesse spun her in front, shield and threat in one. "Give it up, Landry," Jesse spat. "I know what she saw. I know what you all are." Cole locked eyes with Ada. She didn't flinch. She mouthed, "Do it!" Cole fired. The shot split the night, catching Jesse's shoulder, Ada ducking free as Nora and the sheriff charged from behind, pinning Jesse to the mud. But Nora paid the price. A stray bullet found her side as she covered Ada, blood blooming dark beneath her hand. Cole dropped to his knees, pressed cloth to the wound, his voice raw. "Don't you leave, Nora, not again." Sheriff Tom and his men wrestled Jesse down, shackled and broken. Flames hissed from the ruined barn. Clay and Toby, bruised but grinning, huddled with Ada on the porch as the threat finally passed. Cole held Nora as she shook, her breath ragged, and whispered, "You're home, little sister. I won't let go." As dawn crept up the horizon, the land smoldered but still stood, and so did they, wounded, shaken, but together. In the smoke and dust, a family remade itself on ground once soaked with regret. Morning rose pale and bruised over dry willow, the land hushed beneath a sky gone slate with ash. The old barn was a blackened skeleton, the pasture dotted with character, but the house still stood, stubborn as the souls within. Cole walked the yard at first light, boots scuffing through burned straw, Nora's blood still staining his shirt. Every board he touched, every tool he picked up, was a quiet promise. He would not let this place fall. Inside, Ada sat by Nora's bedside, pressing cool cloths to her fevered brow. Clay and Toby hovered near, unsure, wanting to help, but afraid of making it worse. Outside, Sheriff Tom and the men of Dry Willow dug a fresh foundation for a new barn, hands moving steady, their silence carrying respect and apology. Nora opened her eyes at noon, pain softening in her gaze. "I don't reckon I'm much use for mending fences," she whispered, a wry smile just visible. Cole knelt beside her, voice thick. "You don't have to fix anything, Nora. Not anymore." Ada brought soup, set it by the bed, then lingered in the doorway, watching Cole. The room was full of quiet, but not the lonely kind. It was the hush that comes when grief is almost done with you and hope is nearly close enough to touch. After sunset, the whole family gathered outside. Even Nora, with Clay's arm tight around her shoulders, they sat in a circle on the dirt, the firelight catching every scar, every new beginning. Sheriff Tom stood by the porch, arms folded, nodding to Cole. "You built something worth fighting for here, Landry. Don't let anyone tell you different." Clay poked at the fire, then looked up at Cole, his voice just a tremor. "If you had to do it over, would you ever leave someone behind again?" Cole's eyes lingered on each face, the pain, the strength, the promise. He shook his head slow, gravel in his words. "No, son, and I'll never let anyone here go it alone. Not while I can stand on this dirt." Toby crawled onto Cole's lap, pressing a small, muddy hand to his. Ada slipped her hand into his other, her grip warm and certain. Dry Willow Ranch rose up again on charred earth, each day stitched together by small acts, a beam raised, a loaf shared, a wound tended without complaint. Ada and Cole worked side by side, mending fences and planting wild flowers along the porch. Clay grew tall, strong in his quiet way, helping Cole lead the cattle and teaching Toby how to ride. Nora healed slow, sometimes staring into the distance, but always returning for supper, her laughter now a part of the evening air. As spring crept back, the family built more than walls. They built a life bound not by blood, but by the choices to stay, to forgive, to begin again. The townsfolk, once wary, now came by with food or a hand when storms threatened. Dry Willow wasn't just a ranch anymore. It was a place where regret finally lost its hold. One day, as the grass swayed green and high, Clay looked at Cole and asked, "This really home now?" Cole smiled, lines deep around his eyes, the kind of smile earned by fighting through more than one lifetime of storms. "Yeah, Clay, it's home, for as long as we're together." And so, beneath the wide and watchful sky, their story didn't end, but kept unfolding one dawn at a time, a testament to the land, to love, and to the fierce, stubborn hope that nobody here would ever have to walk away alone again.